Welcome to the Middle Age-ish podcast. Authentically and unapologetically keeping it real. Discussing all things middle-age-ish. A time when metabolism slows and confidence grows. Join fashion and fitness entrepreneur Ashley Badowski, former Celtic woman and founder of the Lisa Kelly Voice Academy, Lisa Kelly, licensed psychologist and mental health expert, Dr. Pam Wright, and highly sought-after cosmetic injector and board-certified nurse practitioner, Trisha Kennedy Roman. Join your hosts on the journey of Middle Age-ish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Middle Age-ish Podcast. I'm Trisha Kennedy Roman, and I'm joined here today with my co-host, Ashley Badowski and Lisa Kelly. We are missing our Dr. Pam today. She is off. She has been watching her son in some dance competitions, and he has done amazingly well, so congratulations to him. We are going to miss her again today, but we are so incredibly honored to have with us tonight Michael from Think Unbroken. He is an advocate for adult survivors of child abuse, an international speaker, an author, a coach, and has a highly successful podcast called Think Unbroken. It is such an honor, and we'd like to welcome you, Michael. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's just a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Happy to be here with y'all.
We're just super impressed with all you've done in your story, and we were talking a lot about victimhood and how it's much easier to stay in victimhood no matter what your trauma is or what you've faced, and just how amazing it is to become the hero of your story, like you say, and what an accomplishment that is, and how you've taken that to really help others is just super amazing.
I just don't know what else to do.
Oh.
When asked.
Yeah. Well, we're glad that you do what you do because, again, like Trisha said, we've listened to your story. We listened to your podcast. We've listened to those that you have helped. And that was one of the things that we were talking about before you popped on, is just how turning, a tragedy into a triumph. And I think that that is what this world needs more of, and how you got to that place. And again, just turned it to helping others and making something beautiful after something, tragic. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't always that way, and it took a tremendous amount of effort.
So for our listeners that don't know your story, can you give us just a little bit of background about how you've come to have Think Unbroken and how you've come to this point?
Yeah, of course. And look, I always say this, regardless of the number of times I've done this, like, if you're listening, don't compare your story to mine, because there's not a lot of people in the world who has a story like mine, right? So, and I say that not to be off-putting, but it sounds like a movie sometimes, even when I say it and I'm like, yo, this is for real, for real. I've even cross-referenced and cross-checked my story with people in my life just to be like, am I crazy? Did I make this
did this
up?
really, did this really happen?
Yeah, did you this? And they're always like, yeah, dude, I was there. I was like, yeah, so.
Okay.
When I was 4 years old, my mother, who was a drug addict and alcoholic, actually cut off my right index finger. And, hurt people. And that's the nature of, that's the truth of it. And she married my stepfather when I was 6, who was super abusive. I mean, the dude was literally a monster. I mean, imagine a guy my size, I'm 6'4", 220, beating up a 7-year-old and putting him in the hospital. That dude was a real weak coward. Right. And I said it and I go well, how do two people end up like that? I go, well, look at their parents. Yeah. And look at their parents and look at their parents.
Right.
So I spent the majority of my childhood deeply in poverty and even homeless. And in fact, I lived with over 30 different families between 8 to 12 years old, just getting bounced around place to place to place with members of the church, strangers, families, friends of friends of friends, living in a van. And in fact, when I was 11, I lived in an abandoned house completely by myself for 6 weeks, where I was stealing food from the Big Lots on the corner of 30th and Georgetown, Indianapolis. And so I spent a lot of time in childhood just being in chaos. And when I was 12, my grandmother adopted me, which in a lot of ways is a godsend. But I'm biracial, black and white, and she's an old racist white lady from a town in Tennessee you never heard of. Oh, and so it's insert identity crisis. I mean, and when I say racist, I'm not, black people weren't allowed in our house. We had a copy of Hitler's autobiography, Mein Kampf, in our freaking kitchen.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
And my uncle's a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. And so when I say racist, I'm not like just talking about somebody who's like ignorant, right?
Yeah. Right.
And like in any child in that situation, in the environment I was in, while also growing up in the hood, which is like a really strange juxtaposition, toppled with being Mormon at the time, I like started getting high. I was just getting stoned every day, popping pills. I'm 12 years old, right? By 13, I'm getting drunk. And at 15, I got expelled from school for selling drugs. And, you know, I'm in the streets, I'm breaking in houses, stealing cars, running from the cops, getting shot at. But it was just normal. Like that's what's so crazy. It was just normal. That was life. I get put into a last chance program. I still don't end up graduating high school. In fact, I got kicked out my senior year. And in summer school, my summer school teacher pulls me aside. I think we're like the second weekend or something. And he goes, you know what, man, we're just going to give you your diploma and we'll let the streets take care of you. And that's what happened.
Oh, my Lord.
And look, I mean, like I was a monster. I'll call it what it is. But like that was probably like a really dumb thing to say to a child. And what's weird is like in that moment, like I got fired from a warehouse job I was working at, simultaneously have this whole situation with school happen. And I'm sitting in my car one night and I'm like, all right, dude, you are not getting out of your car until you figure out the solution for this. And this was the chaos, the suffering, the hurt, the poverty, the abuse. And I was like, I'm going to make $100,000 a year legally. That part was incredibly important by the time I'm 21. That became the goal. Because I was like, money has got to be the solution for poverty, for homelessness, for abuse. Yeah. Like, what else would it be? Why are we getting evicted? Why is our water getting turned off? Why are bill collectors always coming? And the legal part mattered because at that point, I've been in handcuffs more times than I can count. I got family in prison for life, literally to this day. And like my 3 childhood best friends have been murdered. And so I knew the path I was walking down. And I made that decision. I made that declaration. I just started learning skills. And sure enough, by the time I was 21, I landed a job with a Fortune 10 company. Everyone listening to this show knows what this company is. I won't say them, but I landed a job with this Fortune 10 company. By the time I'm 26, I made almost $1 million.
Wow. Amazing.
And it's not because all of that money only brought out parts of me that I didn't even know I had the ability to tap into. And they were dark. And I found myself heading into 26, I was 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep. I was high from the moment I woke up till the moment I went to bed, cheating on my girlfriend, $50,000 in debt. My car got repoed. And my little brother says, never talk to me again. You're not my brother. I hit the goal, but I paid a price.
Right.
And I just remember it was like this Saturday, shortly after this really intense conversation with my little brother. It was just a couple of days later. And I was laying in bed. You know, keep in mind, I'm 350 pounds. I'm eating chocolate cake and watching the CrossFit Games. It's like, bro, what are you doing? And what triggered that really hard experience, that moment, like I was watching all these people make their dreams come true. And yet here I was blaming the world for all my shit. And I pulled myself up and I went in the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror. And, you know, I remember being 8 years old and the water company had come and turned our water off. I grew up in America, the greatest country in the world, in Indianapolis, in a major city. And we were so impoverished because of my mother's drug addiction and my stepfather's alcoholism and their lack of responsibility as adults that our water got turned off.
Right.
And my mom says to me, go across the street and get water from the neighbor's house, but don't tell them. So I went in the backyard, got this little blue bucket. I walked across the street to our neighbor's house and I stole water for the first time. And it was not the last. And I just remember being like, when I'm a grown up, this won't be my life.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it wasn't. Right? On paper, people look at my life and I'm like, this dude's making 6 figures. He's got an $80,000 car, this hot blonde girlfriend, blah, 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 blah. But in real life, like, you know how when people are dying, they're like, I think I got like 6 months. You know, they kind of feel it. It's in their energy. It's in their spirit. I was like, I'm about to be dead. Either I'm going to prison for life or I'm killing myself. I had already put a gun in my mouth once before and I was just done. But this one day, like looking in this mirror, is what I always coach my clients on, right? People will hear this conversation. They're like, man, that guy's life was really f***ed up. I'm like, yes, it was. But what I always tell my clients, I'm like, go look in the mirror, because that's the one place you can't lie to yourself. And I did something that I'm going to tell you right now. If your psychologist partner was on, they might disagree with what I'm going to say, but here's the reality. I looked at my life at 26 years old, having always blamed everyone but me. And I looked in that mirror and I just tore into myself. And it was not this thing about hatred, but it was like, I distinctly remember this. I was like, get your life together. You're a loser. You're blaming everybody for your problems. Look at what you've done. And that for me became this really interesting moment of accountability and personal responsibility that 13 years later has led me to this conversation with y'all.
Do you see, though, like with your clients and those that you coach, that they still have that moment of clarity that you had? Or do you need, like, do you feel like you sometimes have to kind of coach them to get to that point? Because I do know those that I don't think that they when they look in the mirror, that is not like what you just said is like so amazing, but that's not where they are. So like, how do you coach a person to get to that point where they're actually super honest with themselves and their self-awareness and gets to that crossroads of it intersects instead, kind of coming out of that life of victimhood and stuff like that, if that makes sense?
I love that question. Here's what's so crazy. Like, I've been interviewed like 400 times. No one's ever asked that question before. I love that question. So thank you. Here's the reality. Normally, if you haven't had that moment yet, you're not picking up the phone and calling me.
Right.
Yeah. You're not looking for help.
That's exactly right. Because it's like, people always ask me, what would you have told your younger self? Like, nothing, because I wouldn't have listened. Like, you have to be open to receive, right? And I find that generally the people that I work with, the vast majority, have already crossed the threshold. And they are in this place in their life where they have acknowledged, right? Which acknowledgement, I think, is the number one trait of anyone who's going to heal. And
Amen.
they become incredibly honest about the role that they've played in their own life, but more importantly, the impact that has led to them to the moment where they're like, what's wrong? Right. And then when I sit with them, I go, okay, cool. Let's just assess where you're at. Let's start here, because it's honesty and truth. You always have the old adage, truth will set you free. And it's like the number one rule that I have for this game is like, stop lying.
Yeah.
Because if you really think about it, no, I'm going to dive in it. Because if you really, really think about it, when people or children, I'm going to go through the scope of a child. When a child grows up in an environment like mine, the number one survival mechanism that they have is to lie.
Yeah.
The most dangerous thing I could do as a kid was tell the truth. The fastest way for me to get slammed into a wall was to honor a want, a need, an interest, a personal boundary. Like, dear God, if I told the truth, what would happen? And so now, because of these defensive mechanisms, our brain goes, okay, telling the truth is unsafe, so I'm not going to do that. And so here's what I started doing. The most dangerous sentence I would argue anyone could ever say is I would do these really insane things, dangerous, detrimental, hurtful, harmful, like you name it, right? To myself and to others. And I would just go, that's just who I am. Because it's been so programmed into me. And so I think that if you can get to this place, and even though this is so painful, like it sucks, like it really, 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 really sucks to be like, yeah, I got hurt by people who were supposed to love me.
Right.
But when you can do that, that's where you start planting the seeds to set yourself free.
You know, what I find really amazing is I had a very idyllic childhood, and it's hard for me to understand some of the horrible things that I've heard other children like yourself go through. But I've been involved with mentoring young women who have been involved in sex trafficking. And a lot of times it's their parents throwing them in that for drugs and such. And the thing it's been so hard for me to understand is trying to get them to realize you deserve better than this. And they don't, that's just what they know. That's just their life. And they don't feel like they deserve better. You sound like you've really known, I am more than this. I deserve more than this. And so many people are not like that. They feel like this is just, they don't have that confidence. They don't have that desire because that's all they know is that horrible life. What do you think made you have that drive?
I have no idea. It's so funny. I was literally just asking someone this question today, and I just don't know. I think part of it is I got to bear witness to a lot of different environments very young. And so I got to discover, here's what's really interesting about being homeless. I got to discover what other people's lives were like. Like, I'll never forget the first time I went over to this family's house. We're having dinner. Everything is clean. There's no rats and roaches everywhere. The children have beds. I slept on a concrete floor for most of my childhood. And what I witnessed in this moment was like, it was calm, and there were like candles on the table and like music in the background. And the wife and the husband were yelling at each other and breaking things. And this was the cornerstone moment. This kid talked back to his father like kids do.
Right.
And he didn't get hit in the face. And I was like, I didn't know that was a thing.
Right.
And so I was just exposed. I honestly think that's what it was. I just saw that there could be something different. And that's the thing I always try to work with when I'm working with anyone. I'm like, just find the clues that something can be different. And I think the other part of it too, just like straight up, I'm super stubborn. Like, it is my greatest trait and my greatest character flaw. And when I zero in on something, nothing's going to stop me. And so I think part of it was that too. I remember just watching like television, because I'm a kid from the 80s and early 90s. TV raised us. We were latchkey kids. And I would just watch TV and I would see these lives that people had. And if I were in school or at home or walking around the streets, I would just be daydreaming all the time. Right. But it wasn't I was visualizing. Like, I was seeing this future of this other thing, but to really like loop it in, I don't know. Like, I really don't. I can sit in her surmise all day long, but I don't have any idea. It's the same way you see kids grow up in the same household and have two very and vastly different outcomes. Yeah. My life is very different than my siblings. They're great. They're crushing life right now. I'm super proud of them. We don't do anything remotely close to the same thing. Right.
Right.
So I don't really know.
It's just, for me, I just like listening to your story. Those were two of the questions I was going to ask you as well. I was trying to figure out how you realized that your life wasn't the norm, which you just explained. And then for me, listening to your awakening at 26, I just think that's amazing at 26. And I know you experienced so much within your life in those 26 years, but just to have a realization that you were killing yourself. And this time it was you doing it as opposed to somebody else doing it. You were at the realm. I just think that's really incredible. Because I don't think at 26, although I turned my life around to 22, but I don't think.
But just to have the self-awareness,
yes,
and the confidence.
And you have experienced that life before. Yeah. So those 5 years, was it 21, you started working in this company? So you had 5 years of like craziness in this life, but to realize that still wasn't the right life for you, even coming from what you came from. I think that's just so admirable. I think that's incredible at 26.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I think that's probably like, one is acknowledgement and two is just fed up with myself, right? And so I'm like looking at my life and I'm really like, all right, cool. Cheated on another girlfriend. Great. Car got repoed. Perfect. 50 grand in debt. All right. Brother doesn't want to talk to you. Okay. You want to keep this going because you know where you're going. You know where and I was like, I'm going to prison or I'm going to die. There was no way there was any other option. I just didn't see anything differently. And I remember I read this quote one time and it says, the only thing that gets a man through the desert is hope. And that just sat with me. I mean, even today it sits with me. And I just was like, what if I could? Right. And I know people say that, but I'm like, I really meant it. I was like, what if I could just do something like differently? And it was just like baby steps, because it's not, I don't want to paint this picture as like 26 and my life changed. It was, all right, I'm 26. I made a decision and the next 4 years of my life were the hardest 4 years of my life.
Oh yeah.
Because it was an identity shift.
Right.
It was like, and that was the beginning of the identity shift. That wasn't even like the things I do now. It was like, okay, here I am. I'm looking down this alley that I've been down a million times. And it's like, can I just go in a different direction in this moment? Not even in the day, right? I wasn't future planning in the way that I do now, where it's like, I'm trying to paint this picture of 25 years from now. I was just like, can I not get drunk today? can I not smoke a cigarette this hour? Can when this girl texts me, I don't go and cheat on my girlfriend again? Like, and it was like, all right, cool. So if I can do these one little steps, it was like, can I create distance and time between up? Like, this is really how I thought about it. And what it started to do was, it was like one step forward, a million steps backwards. But these gaps in time started to create around it where, you know, I look now, I haven't smoked a cigarette in over a decade. You know, I mean, little things like that.
Right. Like, so the baby steps make a marathon.
That's exactly right. But it's accountability to yourself. And people ask me all the time, they're like, how did you become a successful speaker and author and this giant podcast you've made? Because I don't negotiate with myself. That was this to me is probably the biggest thing that I discovered at 26 to 30 in that window, was people who negotiate with themselves lose. Almost entirely every single time. And so I just got it, and I was so cemented in it. I have no friends who were my friends then. I have no community that was my community. My money is different. My health is different. My impact on the world is different. I text my brothers every day we talk, right? Because of my willingness to commit to me first. And to not negotiate with myself about anything ever. Maybe that's to my detriment at times, but I'll tell you what, if it is to my detriment, I'm paying a much smaller tax than I did 13 years ago.
It's incredible. I know, because I think that is like, and that's such a key, because just those that I know in my life, like, there is always an excuse. There is validation in why they do what they do. And I think just having that self-awareness at such a young age, because I know those that are in their 40s and their 50s that they still justify what they do. They still blame anyone who asks them questions about, did you do this? Did you do that? Are you okay? Are you making good choices? You know, so I think your inner core is amazing. But have you had clients, and I'm sure you have, like, again, we're all I'm in my 50s. You know, when do you think that self-awareness, or like, is there things that friends can do that can help expedite that self-awareness? Because I do think that is, like you said, such an important part, where you look in that mirror and there is no more BS. Like, you actually know your truth. You know, you can spin a lie, you can spin a different lifestyle with your friends or your family or whatever, but you actually do know your truth. Is there things that friends can do that if they're not ready to acknowledge, or they'll be like, yes, I'm very self-aware and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to. However, it's not my problem. And you guys are being mean and you guys are picking on me. And I mean, I hope that makes sense. But
yeah, I got you. So here, first, I want to address something first. You're allowed to be a victim. I'm never going to take that away from anybody. I mean, I sit here, I walk around, my mom cut my finger off. I was homeless as a kid, drug addict, blah, blah. I get it. I play the victim. I'm really good at it. Here's my thought process around that, though. You do that on a long enough timeline, you die with regret. Yeah, and that to me is a life unlived. Yes. And so I will never take it away. And look, I get it. Like, it's really, 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 really hard. Even for people who didn't have like traumatic backgrounds. Like, life sucks sometimes.
Right.
And sometimes it's amazing. But in between the suck and the amazing, which are bookended, it's kind of just like, man, like, the really, gray. Truly
You're in the gray area.
Yeah, it's just kind of meh. And so it's like, cool, you want to be the victim? Respect. I'm not going to take that away from you, but don't complain.
Yep.
And that's a hard truth for people to hear, because we live in this society in which we coddle each other far too much.
Yeah.
And to your point about your friends, I wish to God one of my friends would be like, hey, dude, you're acting like a complete moron.
Yeah. Okay, well, that makes me feel better.
Ashley's probably said that.
I mean, I might be talking about a true story, so that actually makes me really feel better. Okay, thank you.
I see that, and I'm like, I wish one of them would have said that. I wish one of them would have pulled me aside, and instead, another night at the bar, another night at a strip club, another night at a fancy dinner, another day drunk at 10 o'clock in the morning, another Sunday full of football, which is the dumbest waste of time ever. One of these dudes in my life would have been like, we see you.
Yeah.
Do something about it or you're out. Right. But I didn't get that. And here's the thing, too. And I contemplate this, right? Because I understand why you're asking the question. We want to support our friends. We want to support our community. We want to be able to help them see the thing we see, because it's forest for the trees. Even today, that's why I have a coach, I have a mentor, I have a therapist, I have a group, blah, 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 blah. I have that for me still all the years into this work, because I need somebody to be like, point out and show me, hey, this is a place where you're blind. Here's the problem. If you're not open to it as the receiver, that relationship is done forever. You know this as well as I do. Right?
I know.
And that's the problem, because most people are willing to sit in their victimhood, even amongst the people who love them, saying, hey, stupid, wake up. I'm trying to show you what you don't see. And we go, you hate me. You're this, you're that. And it's like, go look in the mirror and tell me that they're wrong. I'm not saying you don't have friends who suck, because some of your friends might suck. You need to look at them and take them out of your life. But the friends who truly love you are the ones who are going to sit down with you, and they're going to look at you in the eyes, and they're going to say, you don't see this, but I do. And I'm going to tell you something that's going to hurt.
Right.
And we need more of that.
Yeah. What was the hardest thing for you to change when you had the realization? Like, what was the one that you struggled with the most?
Everything. I mean, look, here's the truth. Like, trauma is, I know where you're going. So trauma is, here's how I look at it. This is the context in which I frame it in my mind. Like, it's not the pain that I suffered, right? The body heals. This scar, this finger, 5 skin grafts, that's healed. Trauma is like the theft of identity.
Yeah.
Right? You guys mentioned this word confidence a couple of times now. At 26, I had no confidence, zero. I was super codependent. People don't believe this about me, and this is why I share it. I was super codependent. I said yes to everything anyone ever wanted to do. I was in relationships with incredibly toxic women, luckily never volatile, but definitely emotionally abusive. I came to realize in a really hard smack to my own face one day, I was like, oh, I'm dating my mother. We can get into that later. And then it was like just looking at all these aspects of just always not showing up. It was just constantly not showing up, not showing up, not showing up. And I realized that it was me stepping into this new identity was actually me discovering who I was for the first time.
Yeah, you found you.
I never had the space to be me as a kid, ever. I was a full-blown adult by the time I was 8 years old. Like, no questions asked. Maybe probably sooner, right? If I really dive into it. And so, you know, you look at this life where everything in front of me had been set. It was, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're a loser, you're never going to amount to anything. I'm hearing that in my home from my mom and from my stepdad, right? And then in school, it's being reinforced. My ADD is so bad as a child, in conjunction with being in a constant a constant sympathetic state, hypervigilant, can't focus. I don't get to bathe frequently enough. I wet the bed. Like, I am a great target for any bullies. I got in hundreds of fights as a kid, right? And so, like, some I won and some I lost. Like, that's the way it is. And so I have no confidence at all about anything. And so it's like, look at the people I surround myself with, right? Look at the way I spend money. Look at the way I take care of my body. It was the hardest thing to do, to love myself. And I'm not talking about this, I'm going to take a bubble bath and drink a glass of wine, self-love talk that we hear all the time, which is absolutely nonsensical. It was, I'm going to pull myself through hell because I know there's something beautiful on the other side of this if I can play the game long enough. And that was the hardest thing to discover. It was creating consistency around healthy choices. Yeah. That's it. Like, that was the hardest thing. I still struggle with it. They're different choices now than they were over a decade ago. But it's still, the other night, I just posted this. I was in the gym at 8 o'clock at night. I made a commitment to myself. I said, I'm doing these things in these time periods from my life. It was 8 o'clock at night. I did like 4 or 5 podcasts. I coached one of my groups. I had business meetings. I kind of had a headache. And I was just like, I asked myself this question all the time. And it's, am I taking care of myself, or am I taking it easy on myself? And in those moments in which I feel like I'm taking it easy on myself, that's when I push through it anyway. But on the moments where I'm like, I'm taking care of myself, I'm like, I'm for real sick. I really need to rest. I'm not procrastinating or being avoidant.
Right. I'm just being honest.
I'm being for real. Like, I need a break. I take the break. I come to find more often than not, I don't actually need the break. I just don't want to do the thing. And so I force myself through it. And so even now today, it's still practicing consistency, which builds into confidence. People ask me, well, how do you become confident? You consistently do incredibly uncomfortable things.
Yep.
And those uncomfortable things help you learn to love yourself, because if you're paying attention, you have clarity, those uncomfortable things are about the betterment of your life.
Uncomfortable things make you feel human as well. They humanize you. So like the more you put yourself out there and the more you fail, the better your life becomes.
For sure.
Yep.
So how did Think Unbroken come about? When did you first start realizing that you had a gift to be able to help others and wanted to do that?
I didn't. I was writing a blog. This is where I'm a writer first. Like even as a kid, I was writing all the time. It's always been my outlet. And some people just kept emailing me and they're like, hey, I love what you're doing over here. Will you help me? And I'd be like, no. Good luck.
You're like, this is my journey and I'm fixing myself. So
that's right. That's exactly. I was like, I can't help you. I can't even help myself. Like, what are you talking about? And then just a couple of people were adamant about it. And I was just like, all right, let's see what happens. No promises. This ain't on. If your life gets worse, this is not on me. I already told you I didn't want to do this.
You asked for this, FYI.
You did this to yourself, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
so, and from that moment, I mean, that was almost 8 years ago. And it's just been all the other things have come as a byproduct. And it's weird to me, even still to this day, where people will mention my name and the likes of the Tony Robbins and the Brendan Burchards and Mel Robbins of the world. It happens all the time. And I'm just like, I'm just a guy sitting here telling you the truth. That's all I ever do.
Yeah, but that's what the world needs more of, to be honest, is to have just truth, reality, and honesty. I mean, again, like, no, I can see why there's comparisons, because really the world needs more of that. Like,
I'm not afraid of it. Here's the thing. Like, I realize, I mean, look, here's reality. Like, you really want to get into it? All right. When you start telling the truth after you've been a liar for your whole life, you're going to have to pay some massive penalties.
right.
There are some huge taxes you're about to pay, and you don't even understand it yet. But on the backside of it, when your penance is paid and you have freed yourself from the shackles of your own doing, even though it is through the indoctrination of abuse, right? The thing that happens is everything's different. Your relationships are different. Your friendships are different. Your intimacy is different. Your money is different. Your impact on the world is different. But people are afraid to tell the truth. And we live in a very posturing society where everybody talks about it. Like everybody on Instagram. No. Your best friends are lying to you all the time.
Yeah.
More importantly, you're lying to you. Why are you in that job that you hate? Why are you afraid to move? Why are you with that person that you know is just seeping your energy every day? Because you're a liar and you're afraid to face the truth. And look, I can come up with every reason on the world why you should stay where you are. You're welcome to. But again, that path leads to regret. And you come and you sit with me, I'll find every solution humanly possible to show you how you can get out of the solution that you're in. It ain't always going to be easy. In fact, it's going to suck. And the thing most people normally point to, they go, money, right? I can't get a coach because of money. I can't go to therapy because of money. I can't move because of money. And I'm like, okay, cool. Are you willing to do what it takes to have the life that you want to have? Because if you're not, you lose. If you are, and you adopt, this is the mentality I adopted. At 26 years old, I was like, no excuses, just results. That's become the framework for everything in which I live my life. This is documented. This is one of the things I love about the internet. 8 years ago, somewhere in that window, I had just moved to another state, dead broke. I went there in a rental car with basically a backpack. And I put on Facebook, can somebody give me $150 so I can go to therapy this week? And people are terrified to do that because of shame and for guilt, which I get, right? Because it's inherent. It's so incredibly uncomfortable. But I always just come back to this question. What am I willing to do? And I had to be honest. Hey, I'm dead broke. I really want to go to this therapy session this week. Will someone help me? And guess what? They did.
They did.
And that's the game. Just tell the truth.
Yeah.
The kindness is still out there. And like you said, you got to push through the uncomfortable. You got to show that you're willing to fight for your betterment, because it's not going to come free. And no matter what your circumstances, and obviously you're on one side of the scale and oh my goodness, but I feel everyone's difficulty, you gotta fight for peace, and you gotta fight for betterment. And a lot of times it takes, like you said, it takes a lot of uncomfortable self-awareness to get there.
And there's a timeline involved too. And that's the thing people don't recognize. And the timeline has no start or finish. It is an infinite game. And I, even to this day, I'm like the trauma guy. I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever. But I still have a coach. I still have therapy. I still do the things. This morning, journal, meditate, visualize, eat healthy food, drink water, right? Because it's like I always tell my clients this, once you sign the contract and you come over into this with me, this is the rest of your life game. Whether you stay with me or you move to wherever, like you've made an agreement with yourself, you're going to do what it takes. And I think that's so profound because I get to see these people have these incredible victories. I've coached people from executives at some of the biggest companies in the country to people who are like moms and dads who stay at home and raise their families, or they work at a school, or and doctors and lawyers and everyone in between. And the reality is, like, everyone has the potential to walk down this path of healing, but it's like, are you willing to do it? And are you willing to do it long enough? Because as long as you don't quit, you can't lose. It's impossible. And most people give up. This concept about 3 feet from gold sits with me pretty frequently, where it's like you're one decision away from everything being different. One action, one trip to therapy, one shift in your demeanor from everything being entirely different. And I've seen it play out in my life more times than I can count. I've seen it play out on stages, speaking. I've watched people's lives transform in real time when I'm on stage with them because they got that thing that they needed.
Yeah.
But they chose to come into that room. They made that decision, right? And so I just think if you can be patient and build a solid community around you, like you will figure this out. I promise you will.
I think one of the hardest things is to ask for help. I think there's a lot of pride involved with that. I mean, you as a young man to even, admit that you needed therapy and to ask for help with that. I think that is probably a big roadblock for a lot of people. It's just being able to admit to others that they need help.
Yeah. Well, if you don't, good luck.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, that's where they get stuck is with the pride.
Yeah. Your ego is always seeking being right. Right. And so it's even like, I knew if I would have posted that on Facebook, nobody would have helped me. Right. That's the thing that we start getting into. With
There's
our
that little
ego.
devil whispering. Yeah.
That's right. And it's like, maybe you're right, but you don't know because you haven't done it yet.
You didn't try. Yeah.
You're assuming. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you want to play that game because it's based on historical data. Because when you needed help and support, it wasn't there. When you needed kindness and compassion and community, it wasn't there. What did you experience in the moments in which you most needed another human being? Neglect, abandonment, abuse, molestation, rape, homelessness, getting evicted, drugs, alcohol. My mother, so at 18, I'm going to create context because I want to go somewhere with this. 18 years old, I told my mother, I will never talk to you again. That is singularly the hardest decision I've ever made. To this day, till the day she died, because she's dead, I maybe saw her once or twice. Did not even go to her funeral because I knew being in connection with her would lead down this path where there's no chance in hell I'm here with you right now.
Get ready.
And I think part of the thing that people hold on so tightly to is the past.
Oh,
And And instead of looking at it, maybe part of my journey for me that's been what has catapulted me forward is I'm a nihilist. And I just always have felt like none of it really matters. Like if you really chalk it up at the end of the day, right? When we're dead in like a generation, nobody's going to remember us. You can't even name your great grandpa. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like we're so removed, but we're so tied into these moments. Because if you think about it, like where memory is stored in the hippocampus, it's always trying to come back to these things for survival, right? And then you factor in the amygdala, and here you are in this thing that's supposed to control the way you navigate the world for safety. And if they're both out of whack all the time, you're always seeking the known. Well, here's the thing, people come to me all the time, and they're like, I thrive in chaos. And I go, that is so stupid. Like, why would you want to thrive there? Because it's known. Why are you in an abusive relationship? Because it's known. Why do you find yourself in constant debt? Because it's known. And becoming you is the unknown. And this is the hardest thing that we do. The same answer to your question that I gave you a few moments ago in that journey of identity. Becoming this new version of you is scary because it's like standing on the top of a diving board. You never jumped in that water before. And everyone behind you is like, jump, jump, jump. And you're terrified. And until you jump, nothing's going to be different. And sometimes jumping is really sitting in the reality of the past, accepting it, acknowledging it, realizing you cannot control it. And most importantly, understanding that today you have the power to remove yourself from it. I'm not saying stuff it down. That doesn't work. Tried it. Go check me out, 26 years old. That's why you stuff it down. I'll show you what it looks like. You get guidance, you get coaching, mentorship, therapy. You listen to podcasts like this. You get introspective. You hit the journal. You take care of yourself. Put down the drugs and alcohol and hooking up with strangers. Push yourself through pain of suffering. Suffering, a word people do not actually understand the definition of, means to be in discomfort. And if you're willing to suffer, you will grow. And ultimately, that growth will allow you to look at the past and say, and this is where it gets really twisted, and be like, I'm glad that happened. I'm glad it's over because here I am today living this life that I never imagined possible.
Yeah, suffering is worth it when you get to the other side. Yep. And like you were saying, peace is worth that leap of faith, the peace, the positivity, the happiness. But you're right. You're standing on that edge of the unknown, but it's worth it. And I think just the more people that hear that story, it makes a difference.
Yeah. And I just had one more thought, because it's like one of the things you have to recognize too is when you start this healing journey, you're doing something actually really spectacular, right? And the mission of Think Unbroken is to end generational trauma in my lifetime through education and information. Right. So maybe we just plant a seed in someone's head about possibility because they heard my story and they're like, well, this guy can do it. Right. Which is fine. I'm totally okay with that. And then what happens is as you make the decision to go down this path, you are healing in a quantum way, both the past and the future as the one of your family. You are the Neo of the matrix of your family, of your lineage, of your timeline, both energetically and genetically. You are healing all of this. And effectively what happens is because of the exponential and compounding factors of what it is to be a human on a long enough timeline, you play a role so big, you can't even begin to measure the impact that you've had. And in my opinion, you have a responsibility to heal.
I think that's the purpose. That's why we're here. It's why we go through is to heal our soul and our energy and to move forward and do what we were meant to do.
So with the community, you obviously have your podcast, which is amazing. So we've been listening to it, and it's just truly remarkable. You have your coaching, and then you have your community you've created. Can you tell us just a little bit about your online community?
Yeah, we have a couple of different Facebook groups. I coach people every single Monday. Think Unbroken, do virtual events when I have time. Lots of these podcast things like that. And really, it's just about a place for people to come together if they choose to. You know, this is choice.
It's an incredible resource. The online community is an incredible resource for people.
Yeah. And I think too, it's about like the online thing is fine, but I find the people who are willing to like come into the coaching stuff as a group, they find way more value because we're together every single week. We don't cancel. Like it was like 4th of July and like we're in the meeting.
We're here. Let's do it.
We're here. I don't give a that it's 4th of July. It's like, let's go. Right. And so it's so much of it is about, I looked at when I made it, because my background is being an entrepreneur. Basically, I walked away from that Fortune 10 company. I started my own business. Everyone told me you're an idiot. And they were like, you'll never make this much money ever again. I was like, all right, whatever. And I looked at this through the scope of running a business. I said, this is not a nonprofit. I will never lie to anyone and be like, this is for $0. But I've coached thousands of people for free. In fact, you go to thinkunbroken.com, I'll coach you for free anytime, any place in the world for 10 minutes. I coach 50 people a week on average, right? Because my belief is in the exponential property of the impact that I'm making today. And so whether you join an online community or you listen to a podcast or you read a book, which I also give away for free, including the shipping, it's like, what are you going to like do something with your life? Like it's here, the support you need, the community you need, the people who are here, the people that I needed. Because when I started this journey, none of this existed.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to go create what I needed. And so that's what I do.
Yeah, you found your purpose.
I don't think so. No. Hold on. Wait. I don't think I found my purpose. I don't.
Really?
I don't think I found fulfillment.
Okay.
I don't think those things are the same thing. And this is to me. And,
I totally get it.
And people are often like, hey, what's my purpose? I'm like, to have babies. Like that's the whole purpose. That's the purpose of human life. Procreation. But fulfillment's really dope too.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. Yeah. Maybe both don't go hand in hand.
There is that.
Well, you're definitely a hero of your story. And I think you're a hero to a lot of people. I know that even though my path has been way different, I've definitely picked up a lot from you and have been definitely inspired. So I really appreciate your time tonight. This has been a really great conversation. And I think it's just a wonderful thing that you're doing.
I know. We appreciate what you're doing.
And you're an incredible interviewer. I listened to so many podcasts today while I was cleaning my son's room, and your interviewing is just unbelievable. One of the best podcasts I've ever listened to.
I know. Lisa came in tonight and she's like, uh-oh.
Well, I appreciate that.
She's like, we need to try to have our game on.
Up our game here, ladies.
Yeah. Well, I dedicate myself to just a few things. People are always like, what are your hobbies? I'm like writing books, podcasting, speaking on stages. Like those are my hobbies.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And that's amazing.
And so with the podcast, I love it. We'll approach 700 episodes here very shortly. And it's just been an honor to interview some of the greatest minds in the world. It is you guys know this, it's very selfish. I'm trying to learn without paying these people.
Well, that's what that's what we say. We said every time after we get done, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure if anyone else learned something, but we all we really feel good. Like this, okay, this was for us.
Yeah.
So we totally get it. But thank you for what you do.
For sure.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
It matters.
An honor.
We'll definitely have all of your information when we post the podcast. So we really appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you again for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah. Anytime, my friends. Thank you all. You're great.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Well, that was...
I'm in awe.
Oh, to grow up that way. That's what I was trying to, how do you know? And I know what he was saying about going to his friend's house, but surely you'd see that as an anomaly nearly if all you've ever known
or make you bitter
as well. Yeah.
How does it not make you bitter? And I just think the fact that him as a human had the self-awareness to want to be out of that and to be better.
Yeah.
There has to be such a strong inner core. And I think it's amazing that, again, like we talked about earlier, that he has turned something that was incredibly tragic, that, like he said, was like a movie that you wouldn't even believe, to triumph.
It's like we always tie our podcast together, but Jennifer Norman, her bitter or better. I mean, he's definitely a case of, I think it would be very easy to be bitter. I cannot even comprehend his life and what that would have been like. And also you think about negative self-talk. Like he heard that talk with his parents and his teachers and telling him, that he wasn't.
That's where your self learns its self-worth is when you're younger. Like that's how you that we come as these little babies, these little humans, and to be constantly told that you are not worthy, and even worse,
and to grow up that articulate. That's the other thing that I was blown away by.
I am in awe.
He's incredible
of him, and again, just turning something and wanting to help other people not experience that or get out of that rut of self-doubt. Because I think it would be so easy to turn so selfish that you figured your way out and you made all this money. Yeah. And instead he's like, no, I'm going to turn back around and pull somebody with me. Yeah. And I just think that, the world needs more people like that, but also they just need to know that there is a path out. Yeah. But you have to be willing to do it.
You have to be willing to change you too.
Right. Because nobody else can change you. And and at some point it's not anyone else's fault. No. At some point you've got to take ownership of how you turn your life. And I think that just hearing more people like that, knowing that you actually can, but it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Well, I think his story too, it would be one thing for me to be a life coach and telling someone who's had it really rough, hey, you can do this, versus someone like him who's had it worse than anyone I've really heard, to be able, I think that authenticity and like that, like life, because it I feel like I've had things very set up well for me.
Yeah.
So it would just be harder for someone to, take that advice and relate.
Right, like to relate.
Versus if they'd had a bad life, you look at his, like, okay, if he can do it, like he said, if he can do it, anybody can.
Right. Like get it together and like you can do this. And
he's amazing.
like I've got a process.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I also think, I was thinking when he was talking, I was like, can you imagine if he was your coach? Like if I was him and that had been my story, I think I'd be slapping people in the head going, you think you had a bad
like shut up.
Yeah, have you any idea?
But I think he gets it though, because it's a matter of relativity. Like for a child, maybe not getting invited to a birthday party is the worst thing that's ever happened to them, versus
he got his finger cut off.
I think it's just our worst thing is the worst thing that's happened to us.
Of course, it's all
like
relative.
A relative.
It's all relative.
But it would be really hard to hear
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And not be like,
and
really,
not go, really.
that's the worst thing.
And that's just why I'm still in awe that this is his life journey, and this is the path that took him, and this is where he's going, because you're so right. He's the perfect one to be like, no, you got to be honest. You got to look yourself in that mirror and like, no more BS.
Yeah.
Like
it's powerful.
It is so powerful.
It is.
Okay. Cheers. Every single day trying to make a better you.
Thank you for joining the ladies of the Middle Age-ish podcast as they journey through the ups and downs of this not young, but definitely not old season of life. To hear past episodes or make suggestions for future episodes, visit www.middleageish.com. That's www.middleageish.com. You can follow along on social media at Middle Age-ish. Also, if you have a moment to leave a review, rate, and subscribe, that helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode of the Middle Age-ish podcast.